Alright, welcome to Willstar Mysteries. What I have for you today is I have 6 Bigfoot sighting reports for you. 3 of them from elk hunters, 2 of them from motorists, and 1 from a Boy Scout. All of these occur in the Pacific Northwest, and I can't wait to give them to you. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because most likely you're going to like what you see. Alright, let's go ahead and get into it. I had a pretty close encounter in September 1994 near Tollgate, Oregon during elk bow season. I had been in the woods for several days. I was tracking a hit elk on the north side of United States Forest Service Road 64, about opposite Jubilee Lake at about 1 or 2 p.m. I was down on the Skookum Spring side of Dusty Ridge, about a quarter to a half a mile from Dusty Spring, an abandoned campground, and saw movement about 70 yards cross slope and down at the edge of a clearing, some 30 or 40 yards across. A large biped with unusually long swinging arms walked across the clearing, heading away and upslope at an unhurried pace. Near the far edge of the clearing, it stopped and turned and looked directly at me. It was covered head to foot in hair, dark brownish in color, and I got a very, too good actually, look at it. It knew I was there. I have no doubt to this day. It then turned and continued away. I saw it for perhaps 2 minutes in bright sunlight. I vacated the area without finding my elk or going over to look for tracks. I can say it was not a man or anything I have ever seen before. As it walked, it swung its arms, but they were so that the palms of the hands were clearly to the rear and much nearer the knees as opposed to the hips as mine are. When I got home and told my wife, she said that the previous weekend some guy had taken videos of Bigfoot at Hoodoo Spring, some 20 miles from where I was at, and they had been on the news. I have no pictures, but can certainly take someone to the spot without difficulty, even now. First of all, I have kept this to myself for many years, for fear that people would say we were nuts. It was early summer, late spring. My brother and I were testing his new Toyota pickup. I guess it would be south and east of the Mill Creek watershed near the Washington-Oregon border. We had just crossed Mill Creek and passed the watershed entrance about a mile or so up the hill. The road was gravel and one side was a steep embankment down into a gorge and the other side went straight up. We had stopped to take a leak on the side of the road. As I stood there, I looked across the gorge. It was approximately 100 yards, and there, on an old tree stump, was this thing, just standing there motionless, looking at us. It was about 2:30 or so in the afternoon, clear sunny day about 75 degrees. I quickly turned to my brother, who was standing at the other end of the truck, and told him to look up the hill. We both stood there looking at this thing look at us for a good 5 minutes or so. Then, as if it was never there, it turned and disappeared into the trees. It looked like a large hairy man, kind of brownish, with dark streaks and patches on the shoulders and hips and legs. It moved so quickly that it was there 1 second and gone the next. I do not recall any significant smells, but it was big whatever it was. We could not get to the area where it was standing due to the terrain, so we could not see if there were any tracks. But if they are out there, that area above Walla Walla is where they are. I do not remember all the details of my sighting, but here is the best I can remember of the night I saw something on Cabbage Hill in Oregon. It was December of 1985, right around Christmas. I was driving a truck and trailer going back to Texas from Portland, Oregon. My co-driver was asleep when I saw it cross the highway I-84 on top of Cabbage Hill at about 1:30 a.m. I came around a small curve and it looked as surprised as I was. I stopped with it in my headlights and it stopped right in front of me as I almost hit it, about 2 feet from it, and sat and watched it stare at me through the windshield. I was driving a 1984 Peterbilt long-nosed tractor, which as I recall, the top of the hood is about 6.5 feet from the ground to the top. This creature was head and shoulders above the top of the hood as it looked back at me. It was blondish brown in color, but had bright yellowish red eyes, and was not as mean looking as some have told in the TV shows that try to scare you about it. It had some hair, but was not as hairy as a bear. I thought at first it might be a bear that has been losing its hair. It had very human-like features, like a nose that seemed to me as large but human-like. Its mouth was formed like a human's, but its teeth were a bit longer, but not like fangs. Its belly button was long and deep. It had an innie. It walked like an old man with a backache, kind of bent slightly forward and stiff. Its arms were longer than a man's, but it didn't look like a gorilla with arms too long for its body. I remember thinking to myself that this must be some sort of mutant bear or something. It seemed mad that I was invading its space. It straightened upright and slapped the top of the hood right above the radiator with open hands like it was warning me to leave it alone. I woke my co-driver, but he only saw it as it ran into the woods away from the highway, where I had sat wishing I had a camera to take a picture to show everyone this thing that I had seen. I often looked for it the next few years as I drove through this area, but never again saw it or anything like it. Here's a quick follow-up investigative report. This remarkable encounter lasted approximately a minute to a minute and a half before the Sasquatch departed, allowing the eyewitness ample time to examine it from the security of the elevated truck cab. The location is at the end of a notoriously steep, long uphill haul from Pendleton into the Blue Mountains, and trucks move at a crawl. The driver had to stop rather sharply, but it was not an emergency stop. He estimates the height of the Sasquatch to have been about 8 foot tall, with a shoulder width of about 4 foot. The overall appearance of the Sasquatch was the equivalent, by the witness's description, of a beautifully shaped athletic human male with a slender waist. He mentioned further that it had a dense matted beard, heavy sideburns, and coarse matted bangs. Overall, a rather hairy face, all of it looking like unkempt human hair. It had pronounced brow ridges, larger than human eyes that were light-colored but not reflective in the headlights of the truck. A human-type nose, though broad, down-facing nostrils. The mouth slightly open, showing large teeth and conspicuous canines, though not long enough to be called fangs. The Sasquatch was breathing hard at first sight, as judged by the steam coming from its mouth. It hit the hood of the truck with both hands as it departed. It initially walked away, but then accelerated to a speedy jog before it disappeared to the side of the highway. Alright, let me tell you about today's sponsor, ExpressVPN. Imagine living in a glass house where the windows on the outside, they were actual device screens, where everybody on the outside could come up to your windows and see everything that you're doing inside your house. All your private information, all your private data, spying on you, snooping on you. You wouldn't like that very much. I know I wouldn't. That's basically what's happening every time you're online using an unencrypted network at a restaurant or mall or somewhere like that. All of your data and private info is there for anyone to see and gather and use. That's why using a VPN is so important, and ExpressVPN is rated the best. For any of you that don't know what a VPN does, let me simplify it for you like this. ExpressVPN first basically makes you more anonymous. It hides your IP address. And then on top of that, it gives you another layer of security, basically an invisibility cloak, by encrypting all of your info and data. I like using ExpressVPN to keep my data safe and secure when I'm making purchases online. I've been making a lot of purchases for the channel, and using ExpressVPN, I have no worries about my credit card info falling into the wrong hands. And just like all of you, keeping my data and my money out of hackers and cybercriminals' hands is very important to me. So don't hesitate. Find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN free by clicking on the link in the description box below. expressvpn.com/Bigfoot. Get yourself an invisibility cloak and become more anonymous with ExpressVPN. Fall 1983, Bear Lake County, Idaho. Several friends and myself were camping near Elk Valley with our dads at our annual bull camp. One morning, we started our hunt at the top of a thick area of timber. I had never been in this area before, but my instructions were to make way through the forest and walk straight downhill. After a while, I was expected to break out into a clearing where there will be a saddle with a few rocky knolls which would drain into some ponds at the bottom. This entire area is known as the Bloody Bucket. For what reason, I wasn't sure, and I didn't ask. The hunt was planned out that my friends and I would walk slowly down through this area, hoping to scare out a mule deer or a bull elk, and having the big game cross the path of another hunter in our party. We were spread out so far apart that we couldn't see or hear each other. As I made my way into the opening, everything was just as was described to me. I could see where I needed to end up and meet, even though I knew it was a ways away. I came out right in the middle of the opening and walked down to a rocky area, stopped to take a breather and look around. All of a sudden, down to my left about 100 yards away, I saw what appeared to be three erect dark brown beings walking down a trail near the trees as if they were in a hurry. They were in order of height, with the tallest leading the way, then a slightly smaller one followed by the smallest one of the three, which was trying hard to keep up with the other two. As I took a deep breath to gather myself to see if what I was experiencing was what I thought it was, the leader turned around and gestured with its arm in a manner as if to tell the smallest one to hurry up. They continued to speed walk into the timber and faded away. I was very shocked, nervous, and somewhat frightened. My heart was pounding, and I just sat there in amazement for about 15 minutes. I did not go down to see if I could see any sign of what I just experienced. I just went down to the bottom like I was supposed to and didn't mention a word of it to anyone. I didn't think anyone would believe me anyway. A few years went by, and I met up with one of my friends that I was hunting with that day. I was relieved when he told me, "Do you remember that year when we hunted the Bloody Bucket in Elk Valley?" Well, I've got something to tell you. He went on to describe to a T what I saw that day. It turns out that he was just a little ahead of me and to my right in the trees about 75 yards. Neither one of us knew that we were so close to each other and had witnessed the same thing. It would have been nice to have someone to back me up. Ever since then, I've told a few more people. I also heard that same summer there had been a sighting near Montpelier Reservoir, which is a few miles west of Elk Valley. It's ironic that the only time that I would probably experience something like this, and I don't have a camcorder, or was too stunned to go check out the area and tell somebody about it. No sounds were heard, no real proof that this happened, just my own word. And I remember it like it was yesterday. So now I'm going to go ahead and give you his friend's report. I was camped with my dad and friends at our annual bow camp during the Labor Day weekend. This particular day, our fathers led us out of the truck along the Elk Valley Road and told us to spread out and hunt up over the ridge and down through an area known as the Bloody Bucket. They would pick us up on the other side. As I started to descend down the ridge towards a beaver pond, I saw three figures standing on the edge of the beaver pond. My first thought that they were people wearing snowmobile suits. I thought that this was strange because it was early September and warm. As I got closer, I realized the people were wearing fursuits. Then it hit me what I was really seeing were three Bigfoot, a large, a medium, and a smaller one. They had dome-shaped heads and no fur on their faces. I had no camera with me at the time. I was about 75 to 100 yards away from them. They walked around the edge of the beaver pond through some scrub aspen and into the timber on the north-facing slope. The scrub aspen hit the tallest Bigfoot just below the shoulder. I was very nervous and started towards the beaver pond to see if I could find tracks in the mud. As I approached the scrub aspen, I realized how tall the Bigfoot was. I am 6 foot tall, and the aspen was over my head. At this point, I was really nervous and decided to go into the opposite direction and get out of the area. I remembered that it was unusually quiet during the time of the sighting. Years later, I was talking to my friend who was with me on that day, and he told me what he had seen also. Summer 1980, Custer County, Idaho. The sighting occurred many years ago when I was in the Boy Scouts, attending a big Boy Scout camp at Camp Bradley north of Redfish Lake, Idaho. My group mostly contained deaf scouts. There were 6 of us, including my brother, who was the only one that could hear that hung out with us. During our break time at around noon, we wanted to go out and explore some of the lakes around Camp Bradley. We were told not to go to the third lake, probably because it was too far and the trail was not maintained. As curious and mischievous as we were, we decided to go to all 3 lakes. We passed the first lake, which was the main lake for the camp, and then passed the second lake. We were heading towards the third lake, and the trail got smaller and the forest became more dense. We were all signing in sign language, talking to one another at a different pace. 3 of us, including myself out of 6, saw this huge 2-footed creature walk swiftly across the trail approximately 75 feet away, from our left to our right. The 3 of us that saw this creature stopped quickly and looked at each other to see if we saw the same thing and if our eyes were not playing tricks on us. Just as soon as the 3 of us reacted in almost the same way, we all realized that it was really something. The other three that did not see walked a little bit further and stopped to see why the other three of us had stopped walking. We immediately told them what we saw and what appeared to be a Bigfoot. The other three looked at us as if we were joking or making things up. It was a bit of a struggle for us to convince the other three, but very shortly later they realized that we were really shaken up and frightened. They started to believe us. Some of us suggested that we hurry back to camp, but most of us wanted to see this Bigfoot, so we walked very slowly to the site where the Bigfoot had crossed. We were visibly very nervous, but we were also pretty gutsy kids at that time, and we wanted to show our brave side, but on the inside, all of us were scared. Right when we figured where the Bigfoot had crossed, we looked on the right side of the trail and saw a small meadow in the middle of the dense forest. We walked maybe 30 to 50 feet further into the area but saw nothing. The three of us were still visibly shaken up as we tried to describe what the Bigfoot looked like to the other three that did not see a thing. Between the three of us, we had exactly the same description. The description is this tall, approximately 7 to 8 foot tall, Bigfoot, which was broad, really heavy, but yet it was tall and agile. The most impressive thing was his legs, which were massive and quick. The Bigfoot did not look at us, so we were not sure if he even knew we were out there or not. He was focused on getting from point A to point B. It is possible that he'd have seen us before we saw him and figured he'd had to get out of there quickly and focused on getting away. I do not know if the Bigfoot had heard us and prompted itself to get away because most of us were deaf, so we could not possibly know if we were being noisy or not. This happened so many years ago, but the image in my head is so clear as I still remember exactly what I saw. I do not have any doubt that this creature is definitely a Sasquatch. What I saw with my eyes had exactly the same description as many others have described. Brownish, thick hair, tall and strong, walking on 2 feet, almost like humans, but it was definitely not a human, and could not possibly be a human in an outfit, because we were in the middle of a dense forest where one would not find any human activities for many weeks or even months. I say these things as God as my witness. Old Norm, the caretaker of Camp Bradley, told many Bigfoot stories, but not very many people believed him. My father, who was a scoutmaster for the Deaf Scouts during the 70s, met with this old Norm and became good friends. He invited my dad and my family to his lodge at Camp Bradley one afternoon and showed us a cemented Bigfoot's foot. He also showed us 2 Polaroid pictures of Bigfoots in dense forest area. He had numerous stories about Bigfoot sightings in that area. My brother interpreted for my deaf family as best he could. Old Norm appeared very serious and sincere about Bigfoot. He was not being humorous at all. He was not trying to frighten us either though. He just wanted us to believe him so that we can be careful around the area. Many Scout program participants had different sightings and experiences, too numerous for me to remember. Alright, there it is. What do you guys think about those encounters? Let me know, leave me some comments below, and if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like button. Once again, if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you guys have missed it, the past previous videos have all been about me out on location. I visited Oklahoma, went down there, made some videos, and I also just recently went back to the location where I had my own personal encounter. So you guys might want to check those out. That's where we're going to leave it. Always remember, where there is a Willstar, there is definitely a way. Willstar out.